Welcome to the 14th edition of the Mini Medical School series, 2013 edition. Has anyone been here before? Wow, we have a few hands. Anyone been here 3 times before? Wow. How about 5 times? Quite a few people, 5 times. Anyone been here 8 times? Even a few 8-timers, that's great. How about 10 times? Wow, that's impressive. Well, welcome again, both first-timers and repeat enrollees. I'm Dr. Larry Robinson. I'm Vice Dean for Clinical Affairs and Graduate Medical Education here at the University of Washington School of Medicine and Professor of Rehabilitation Medicine. I want to just introduce a little bit about UW Medicine. Introduce our fabulous 2 co-hosts. UW Medicine is one system with 8 entities in it. The 8 entities you can see here are Harborview Medical Center, Northwest Hospital and Medical Center, Valley Medical Center, UW Medical Center, then our neighborhood clinics, UW Physicians, the UW School of Medicine, and Airlift Northwest. We do have a single mission. The mission is to improve the health of the public, and that's by advancing medical knowledge, by providing outstanding primary and specialty care to the people of the region, and by preparing tomorrow's physicians, scientists, and healthcare professionals. UW Medicine is scattered throughout the Puget Sound region, so we provide easy access to care throughout the greater Puget Sound region. We also have a regional presence for medical education. No other medical school in the United States serves more than 1 state, and UW Medicine actually serves 5 states: Washington, Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho. The initials of those 5 states form the acronym WWAMI, which you may hear later on in the series. This program is considered the benchmark academic model for the training and placing of physicians in underserved communities. So if you look at the 5 states colored here, you'll note that they occupy quite a bit of land area of the United States. Actually, 27% of the land area of the United States is in these WWAMI states. It's only 3% of the population, so this is a sparsely populated area, and part of our mission is to provide workforce for these 5 states in the region. Who represents UW Medicine? Who serves at UW Medicine? Well, we have more than 21,000 employees who contribute to the mission of UW Medicine. We have about 4,500 students and trainees across a broad range of undergraduate, professional, and postgraduate programs. And we have about 2,270 employed faculty members, and then more than 4,600 clinical faculty members across the 5-state WWAMI region. We have a very significant presence in patient care at UW Medicine. We have about 65,000 admissions per year when you consider the 4 hospitals in the UW Medicine system. And we have about 1.6 million outpatient and emergency room visits to the hospitals and clinics each year as well. If you look at our institutional leadership, you'll see that we have been rated #1 in primary care for medical schools for 19 years by U.S. News & World Report. Our hospitals are ranked among the top hospitals by U.S. News & World Report. And the UW School of Medicine is consistently ranked among the top 3 schools in the country for NIH funding by the U.S. News & World Report. So Harvard is #1, and we're #2, and then following us is University of Pennsylvania. So we're the #1 public medical school and the #2 medical school in the country for National Institute of Health research funding. So what's the mission of Mini Medical School? It's not actually to prepare you to practice after you're done with these 6 sessions. If you're here for that, you may be in the wrong session. But it's to inform you in an interactive way about the biomedical sciences, all the way from basic research to patient care. It's to help you develop a better understanding of what our medical school does and the resources it has to offer. And it's to create a partnership with you in the appreciation of the science and patient care at UW Medicine. And probably the biggest thing is to have fun. We hope you have fun during these 6 sessions. We are really lucky to have the 2 co-hosts of Dr. Edith Chang and Dr. Terry Brentnall. Dr. Chang is professor in obstetrics and gynecology at the UW School of Medicine. She's also the medical director for prenatal genetics and fetal therapy program at the UW Medical Center and medical director of prenatal and infant care clinic at UW Medical Center. Dr. Brentnall is the Walters Endowed Chair and Professor of Medicine and Gastroenterology in the UW School of Medicine, and she's an adjunct professor in pathology at the UW School of Medicine and the founder and director of the Pancreatic Cancer Surveillance Program here at UW Medical Center. A little more information about Dr. Cheng, and you'll be meeting or seeing them very shortly. She's also adjunct professor in internal medicine and medical genetics here at UW Medicine and program director of prenatal diagnosis and the treatment program at Seattle Children's Hospital. Her clinical expertise is in prenatal diagnosis, genetics, and maternal cystic fibrosis, and in women and fetuses with genetic conditions. This is Dr. Cheng with her husband, who you'll be meeting later on as a speaker in another session in this series, and with her family. She earned her MS in genetic counseling at Sarah Lawrence College in Bronxville, New York, and completed her MD at the University of Washington, where she also completed her residency. She's had numerous awards, including the very prestigious UW Service Excellence Award, and you'll see she's been mentioned in the Seattle Magazine Top Docs series in 2010 and 2011. Dr. Brentnall treats patients here at UW Medical Center's Digestive Disease Center, diagnosing and treating illnesses of the gastrointestinal tract. Her emphasis involves the origins of pancreatic cancer. And she led a team's discovery that a specific gene, pallidin, when mutated, is associated with one type of familial pancreatic cancer. And you'll see the Radio City Music Hall up there on the left. It's not because she's one of the Radio City Rockettes, but it's really because this was announced when she developed this, when she discovered this gene. This was announced on the white wording down at the bottom of the sign. Her pancreatic surveillance program at the University of Washington has been ongoing for 12 years with over 190 patients and 140 families. Dr. Brentnall earned her medical degree from the University of Washington and did her internal medicine residency at UCLA Medical Center in California.
So I wanted to celebrate in sort of in honor of our today's speakers regarding serving the underserved. The state of Washington won the sweepstakes for Peace Corps volunteers. The University of Washington School is the university in the United States with the most Peace Corps volunteers, the largest university. And Washington State is the one it's a middle-sized university with the most Peace Corps volunteers. And Gonzaga is the small school ranked as having the most Peace Corps volunteers. So the state of Washington should be proud. And I'm really proud because I feel like we're a community that gives back. And that's who our speakers are today. So we're going to start with our introduction to Dr. Dobie.
Dr. Dobie, as you can see, is professor in family medicine at, and she's the director of the UW School of Medicine Underserved Pathway, faculty, college faculty mentor. And I have seen her mentor and teach our medical students on labor and delivery. And she just has this warm, wonderful, embracing touch to these young people. And she teaches them not only medicine, but the art of medicine, of taking care of your patients. As you can see, she practices, she's still clinically very active at the Northgate Clinic at Thornton Place in Seattle. And you can see that this is her passion as well in terms of her family and her friends. And she serves as the medical faculty advisory at the UW Medicine Community Health Advancement Program and has an active research career in focusing obstetrical care in the elderly. And you can see she earned her MD degree at University of California, San Francisco, my hometown. And also did city planning from Berkeley, which is where also my hometown. Prestigious awards in the UW Sterling Monroe Public Service Teaching Award that recognizes her as a faculty member who's demonstrated exemplary leadership in the community-based instruction. I'm looking forward to her book and her swimming and her dance skin triathlon, and I can't believe that these are the kids.
Our second speaker is JUDD WALSON, MD. He's master's in public health as well, so doctor and a master's in public health. And he's an assistant professor here of medicine and infectious disease and global health and pediatrics, adjunct assistant professor in epidemiology in the School of Public Health. So his research is focusing on investigating the impact or treating and preventing endemic co-infections. So that'd be like tuberculosis, malaria. Helminthes are like worms. It's just like, if you use that word, that's a $15 word, but if you say worms, people actually know what you're saying. So people with HIV have a tendency to get other infections, and these are some of the infections that they can get. And the areas where this is most notable or most rampant, unfortunately, is in Africa, and he does work with the Kenyan Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, in Kenya. This must be a picture from where? Nepal. It didn't look like Kenya. I was just saying, I'm thinking to myself, not Kenya. Okay, so Dr. WALSON is a principal investigator, we call that PI for short. He's a PI of a large center grant assessing the epidemiology of non-typhoidal salmonella. So salmonella, I know about this, I'm a GI doctor, it's like diarrhea. He is a faculty co-lead on the Global Health Strategic Analysis and Research Training Program, START, a collaborative program between the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is just extraordinary and wow, and the UW Department of Global Health. I mean, these guys are taking global health by the scruff of the neck and shaking it. These are the people that are going to make a difference. And global health is pertinent to everybody in this room because tuberculosis becomes untreatable, becomes a disease that we need to be thinking about here at home. All right, just wanted to scare you a little bit. All right, now this looks like Kenya. Okay, just moving along in the various parts of the globe. All right, Judd earned a BA from Pitzer College in Claremont, California, and his MD and PhD from Tufts in Boston. He spent a significant time living and working in Thailand and Nepal, where he worked in infectious diseases, no surprise there, and focused on malaria, tuberculosis treatment, and prevention. So this is all very hot stuff, and so it'll be very interesting to hear what he has to say. So let's move on, and we'll invite Dr. Dobie to come on up and get us started out on the right foot.
Good evening. Hope everyone is interested in hearing about some of what we do in the medical school. In Dr. Robinson's introduction, he shared with you that we do have a mission to train the workforce for our region, and in doing that, we have some programs that really hopefully enhance and encourage our students towards careers caring for the underserved. Tonight, we want to talk about why have pathways, what are they? We're going to describe 4 pathways that we have in the School of Medicine, and then we're going to hear from a panel of students. So that's the kind of the first part of our program tonight. So why have pathways? Pathways, you could have a microbiology pathway, you can have research pathways. We do have medical students who pursue their PhD while they're also in medical school. But we also know that pathways can help create a support group. We have a large medical school. Our students are in 5 states their first year, back here for second year, and then all over the 5 states for third and fourth year. So it's a fairly diverse geographic program, and we need ways to create community with our students. Pathways also can help us to encourage students to increase their knowledge and their skills in certain areas. So what are pathways? They can be a way to focus the curriculum. They can involve immersion experiences. They can involve the clinical rotations that students have in their second 2 years, can involve scholarship. Also can draw our students towards service learning and volunteer experiences, can help us create mentorship for students. And if students complete one of the pathways we're going to talk about tonight, they get a certificate of completion when they graduate. The 4 pathways we're going to talk about tonight, in particular, are really designed to encourage students to consider working with our vulnerable populations. We know that at matriculation, about 1/3 of our students come in saying they want to work in a rural area. 1/3 of our students come in saying they want to work with the urban underserved. And 1/3 of our students come in saying they want to do primary care. And we know at the end of the pipeline, the numbers are a little smaller. It's also true that our curriculum has limited content on diversity and cultural competence. It's there, and we're in the middle of a very exciting curriculum renewal, where I think that these topics will be more integrated throughout the curriculum than they have been. But by having the pathways, we can provide for students who have interest in these areas. So the 4 pathways that we have are the Indian Health Pathway, which was the first, and it was started in 1992. The Global Health Pathway, which was really started by a student interest group in 2003. The Underserved Pathway, which was started in 2006, and the Hispanic Health Pathway in 2008. The pathways work together. The staff and faculty in the pathways work to get to know the students, help them navigate each other's pathways. Some students do more than one pathway. We have a second-year family medicine resident this year who graduated with certificates in all 4 pathways, which is pretty amazing given medical school. So we have a website, and this is not a great slide for you to read, but because these slides are posted online for you, these are the websites for the pathways overall, and then each of the 4 pathways for your perusal. So the first pathway I'm going to talk about is the Native American Center of Excellence Indian Health Pathway, which again was started in 1992. And its mission, it has a mission, and its mission is really to improve the health of the Alaska Native and American Indian communities, who are among the most underserved communities in the nation. Its purpose is to prepare both Native and non-Native physicians, medical students for careers within the American Indian, Alaska Native health services. Its also purpose is to encourage research in Indian health. It's also has as a purpose to enhance the curriculum on American Indian and Alaska Native health disparities and health within the School of Medicine. Now you'll see a slide sort of similar to this with at least the first 3 pathways to kind of give you the understanding that the pathways are really supposed to span all 4 years of medical school. So if you look here, the first 2 years currently are basic science in the classroom. The second 2 years are clinical rotations. And the Indian Health Pathway expects its participants to do a preceptorship, so shadowing a physician in a site that serves Alaska Native or American Indian patients during the first 2 years. It also expects the students to do a RUOP, which I'll talk about in a second. And then also all the students in the pathway take a course on issues in Indian health sometime during the 4 years. Most of them do it in the first 2 years. They're expected to do some scholarship. They're expected to do some of their clinical rotations in Native sites, which I'll also talk about in a minute, and they participate in the Medicine Wheel Society. RUOP, I'm going to take just a minute to tell you about RUOP. RUOP is the Rural Underserved Opportunities Program. UW-Medicine probably has more acronyms than about any place I've ever worked. And the Rural Underserved Opportunities Program is a program that has now been in existence for 23 years. About 120 to 130 students participate every summer, and every student is placed for 4 to 6 weeks in a rural or urban underserved site where they live in the community, they're given housing, they shadow a physician, but they also do a community-based project most of the time and really try to get to know the community and the health needs of that community. So the Indian Health Pathway students are placed in a site that cares for Alaska Natives or American Indians. The unique features of the Indian Health Pathway include that all the students participate in the Indian Health Issues course, which I mentioned. They also are asked to do 8 weeks of their clinical rotations in a Native site. So they are supposed to do 4 weeks at an Indian Health Service site or one of the urban sites, and they do 4 weeks of a traditional medicine rotation. So in our 5-state region, there are 5 traditional medical sites where traditional Indian medicine is practiced. And so all of our Indian Health Pathway students participate in that class, in that rotation during usually in their 4th year. And this just shows you a map of the region. It includes the Four Corners area in New Mexico, at Shiprock, where a lot of students also go down and do a rotation. So their Indian site rotations are not limited to the 5 states. They're placed pretty much all over the country. As I mentioned, all UW medical students have to complete a project that includes scholarship. For some, it's a research project. They do bench research, or they do health services research. But some students, for instance, the RUOP students, about 3/4 of the students doing that 4-week or 6-week RUOP also do a community-based project, and that includes some scholarship where they get to know the community, they do a needs assessment within the community, and they develop a project to meet an unmet need within that community. The students in the Indian Health Pathway, if they don't do the RUOP project, can work with the UW Indigenous Wellness Research Institute, with the Seattle Indian Health Board, Urban Indian Health Institute, with the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board, with all 5 of these groups. The UW Indigenous Wellness Research Institute is really quite exciting because it's one of the first institutes in the country where its purpose is to help tribes decide what research they want to do to improve the health of their communities, and then to provide assistance doing that. And so for our students to get involved with that, or with the Seattle Indian Health Board Institute, they're wonderful opportunities to learn how to do community-based research that can really improve the health of a community. The Medicine Wheel Society is an interdisciplinary health sciences student organization that also includes faculty and practicing physicians from the region, all of whom have an interest in improving the health of Native communities. It's a vehicle for mentoring our students because of the participation of American Indian and Alaska Native physicians in the Medicine Wheel Society. It also is the vehicle through which Indian Health Pathway students can give back and do community service. So over the years, they've done dinners, elder dinners. They provide service at the First Nations powwow, doing outreach on health topics to the participants. They mentor high school and pre-med students who are Alaska Native American Indian students to try to increase the number of students, Native students coming into health professions. The blanket ceremony is very, very special. Any student who completes the pathway is invited to the blanket ceremony. Their families come from all over the country, and each student is honored, talked about. The families bring foods that are traditional to their culture, and it is a shared feast. And each student is given a Pendleton blanket that is usually very specially picked for them. So if you look at the center picture of the man in the blue blanket, the title of his blanket is Keep Your Fire Burning. And he's not a Northwest Indian. He's from the Bay Mills Indian community in Minnesota. And Keep Your Fire Burning was given to him by the faculty in the Indian Health Pathway in hopes that he might return to the Northwest to practice medicine and to serve our Native communities. The IHP is funded initially by the federal government. HRSA is the Health Resources and Service Administration. It's part of Health and Human Services, and their agenda is really to improve the health of the public. So it initially funded it, and it's been institutional funding from the School of Medicine since then. They have 57 graduates. 75% are practicing and serving in American Indian, Alaska Native communities, and more than 64% in primary care. So the underserved pathway, which started in 2006, is sort of the broad umbrella pathway. We have right now about 204 students enrolled in this pathway. And it is really for any student that wants to imagine themselves working with vulnerable and underserved populations. We attract students who might want to do advocacy, students who want to work with either in a rural community, most of which are underserved, or an urban community health center, students that want to explore health policy and the needs of specific vulnerable communities, and just students who want to improve the health of the public. The pathway has mentorship, it has a curriculum, customized learning experiences and seminars. And here's the same kind of grid that shows that we want it to be longitudinal over 4 years. So during the first 2 years, most of the students do RUAP, most of them do a preceptorship or a RUAP. Every student in the school has, in their first 2 years, several non-clinical selectives that they do. And for the underserved pathway, 2 of those need to be in a topic related to underserved care. So for instance, there's a course in African American health disparities. There's a rural health class, so a wide variety of opportunities. Again, the students do the independent investigation that I mentioned, so some scholarship. They are required to do service and service learning. We have a mentorship component and web modules. Mentorship in the underserved pathway is a very important component to us. So when a student enrolls in the pathway, we talk to them about what their interests are and what kind of mentor they might find useful to help them hang on to their passion for working with the underserved. And then we look around the region, and we have, I think, probably 50 or 60 physicians, clinical faculty around the region who serve as mentors. And we ask our students and our mentors to be in touch once a quarter at least. I mentioned the preclinical courses. During the clinical years, the students have to do 12 weeks of their clinical rotations in an underserved site, so in a community health center or a rural site, or another site that cares for vulnerable populations. The core curriculum, so everything that the students have done so far that I've told you about are other than RUAP, is a requirement, but we help the students channel what they're doing. The web-based curriculum is actually an add-on. It's something extra that students take on when they're participating in this pathway. We have 16 web-based modules right now, and we have 5 more in development. They're case-based, try to make them somewhat reflective and interactive. We ask everyone to complete an initial one, which is called Who Are the Underserved? Because trying to get clarity on, okay, what do we mean by underserved? What do we mean by a vulnerable population? Is it all about access? No. There are many, many different components to understanding who we consider to be the underserved. And every student has to complete 8. We do one in person every quarter, and if a student comes to that, it's a chance to build community, and they get credit for having done one. All the students do community service, and another amazing thing about our School of Medicine is that we have many opportunities for students to give back and to serve. The Community Health Advancement Program, which I was the faculty advisor for about 20 years, at its peak has had 300 students a year volunteering, doing foot care and dermatology at a shelter, mentoring new immigrant children, working with the downtown homeless, doing sports physicals for low-income kids. We now have 2 other student-run groups. In addition to CHAP, we have students in the community in Al-Shifa and then the Health Equity Circle, which is kind of like an umbrella. And we have many, many more opportunities for students to volunteer. And our students want even more than we have. So I mentioned the independent investigative inquiry, which is the triple I, which every student must do. And it can be research or it can be the community-based project. But for our pathway, it has to be on an underserved topic to qualify. We also started out with HRSA Title VII funding, and since then the Department of Family Medicine and the School of Medicine, the Dean's Office, have supported these efforts. We have 74 graduates so far. We actually only have 1 who's finished residency, so we can't tell you where they're practicing yet. But 57% of our graduates have entered primary care residencies. So the Hispanic Health Pathway, which started in 2008, it's the youngest. And it really is designed to prepare medical students to provide culturally responsive care to the Hispanic population. And its focus on cultural competence is really important because a student could learn that in this pathway and carry it into any population. Again, the longitudinal aspect of the pathway, the students do a preceptorship or a RUAP. They also have to do non-clinical selectives and modules. They do their triple I, it has to be on Hispanic health topic. They do community service, they do clinical rotations, and they attend a conference. So the language requirement, the two non-clinical selectives that these students have to do if they're doing this pathway, they have to do Spanish for health professionals or test out. They also do a Hispanic health disparities class. It's not just for these students. Other students can take these classes as well and do. They do the modules, and they have a movie option. They also have the clinical site locations where the site is caring for a large percentage of their patients are Hispanic, and their III needs to be on a Hispanic health topic. This is just an example of some of the modules that are within the Hispanic health pathway. HIV, AIDS, and Latino, substance abuse, unintentional injuries and homicide, end-of-life issues for Hispanic families. They need to do 6, or they can do 4 modules and take out 2 movies. And if they take out a movie, check it out, take it home, watch the movie by themselves or with friends, then there's a reflective piece or a quiz at the end for that. This is just an example of some of the movies, like The Gatekeeper by John Carlos Frey, Kebola by Terry Swanger. So excellent choices. And they do community service. They might work in CHAP, the programs that I mentioned. They might work with the Latino Medical Student Association doing service projects. Casa Latina is a outreach and assess and refer program that is run by El Shifa, which is one of the 2 student-run groups that I mentioned. And CMAR, which is a Seattle, well-known, long-standing Seattle Community Health Center, every year has a Latina health fair. And many of our students participate and help make that happen with CMAR. They also attend a conference, so the Latino Health Forum they might go to the annual National Hispanic Medical Association conference, but they have funds to go to at least 1 conference during their time in school. Their initial funding from 2005-2010 was from the National Institutes of Health, and they also now have institutional funding. And I think the really important thing before I turn it over to Dr. Walson is to recognize that while we had federal funding to start each of these pathways, the school has continued to support them, which I think really speaks to how important the mission of caring for the people of this region is for our school and how important it is for our students. They have had 21 graduates so far, and they will have, that's 20 from 2009 to 2012. They will have over 20 graduates this year alone. So their enrollment number is up to like 75 or 80. So they're growing kind of at the same pace. And they have 67% of their graduates have gone into primary care residencies. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Walson, and I'll be back later. Thanks.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here and talk to you a little bit about the Global Health Pathway. And I think I'd like to start by echoing some of the sentiments that you heard earlier, which is that while some of us in global health do go on, and in fact, I just got off a plane from Ethiopia a few hours ago, I don't know, 24 hours ago or something. Some of us do choose to pursue global health in Kenya and Ethiopia and all those places. The idea of the Global Health Pathway is really to focus on the global citizenry and the fact that global health is about all of us, including us here in Seattle. And so I think that's really important to keep note. If you stay until later in the evening, I'm going to share a little bit about my path and about the work that I do in Africa and how we are structuring that as a training opportunity for others. But for now, I'm going to share a little bit about specifically the Global Health Pathway. I think for those of you who have the opportunity to interact with young adults and people in their early 20s, you know that this generation is fundamentally different. Their brains are different. And I know that people have been saying that for generations, but I think this really is true now. I think that the age of the internet and communications have fundamentally changed how young people today interact with the world around them and how they think about the world around them. Right now, medical students in this university have access to information and to people all over the world, and understanding how our relationships impact each other, what we do in Seattle, what we eat in Seattle, what we breathe in Seattle has impact all around the world. And so the Global Health Pathway takes advantage of a new Department of Global Health that's about 6 years old here at the University of Washington, where we actually have faculty, over 220 affiliated faculty working in over 93 countries to try to leverage some of this, both energy and enthusiasm, but also really our understanding and how that's changing as to how our global community is intertwined. So the Global Health Pathway really, as you can imagine, is an incredibly exciting, and I think it's a pathway that's really, really in high demand among the medical students here.
I can't imagine a more rewarding future because it lends itself both to like my own sense of adventure, but also my belief in social justice. Most recently, I spent 6 weeks in the northern city of Cap-Haïtien in Haiti. I worked for 2 weeks on trying to identify the strengths and weaknesses of their HIV care. And in that short time, I identified 3 things that immediately were changed or improved. And it's that kind of lasting, systematic change that public health allows. It kind of opens up your eyes to the possibilities of even the little things that you can do to try to improve the lives and health of people thousands of miles from your home.
The pathway is designed for students interested not just in working in Africa or working in Asia, but really working to improve health disparities. And it provides students with a lot of opportunities, both domestically and abroad, including a combination of research work, coursework, field work, and other opportunities. On the right there, or on your left, sorry, you're right there, you'll see one of the students in the pathway who was able to travel to India and do some work there. She's now doing her internal medicine residency. Oh, good. The rest of the slides look like they did okay. So another really interesting part of this pathway that I think shouldn't be overlooked is that this pathway actually came about and was instigated by medical students. And this was something that was done in partnership with the Vice Dean, and back in 2003 was started even before we had a formal Department of Global Health here at the University of Washington. It was approved and started again and incorporated then into our Global Health Department, as I said, about 6 years ago. It's currently administered through the Global Health Resource Center, and many people don't know about the Global Health Resource Center, but that is a center that's run through the Department of Global Health, which provides access to a tremendous amount of resources about the different types of activities and opportunities globally that are linked into the Global Health Department and other institutions, centers, and programs around the University of Washington. It's led by Susan Graham and Jennifer, who's here somewhere, there she is, and a lot of faculty participate in terms of providing guidance. And Susan would have given this talk since she helps to lead this, but she's in Kenya, so here I am. So that's part of the dangers and hazards of working in global health, is that everybody's off globally all the time. But students, as part of this pathway, again, I want to focus on the fact of what the program is and what this is really all about. They need to complete both coursework, but as well as projects and experience designed for a few specific learning objectives. And if you look, these aren't about learning how to go practice medicine in Kenya or learning how to go practice medicine in Peru. They're about understanding and developing an awareness of key diseases that affect people's health around the world and the health systems in which these diseases occur and in which they're treated. It's about understanding all of the issues that go into global health disparities. What are the historical significant issues such as colonialism, the economic, political, environmental, and other factors? This is really important if we're going to understand our world in terms of health. Learning to provide compassionate and effective medical care to all patients who come from a variety of different cultural frameworks and limited resources is something that we deal with here in the United States. You're all, I'm sure, very aware of the debates going on about our own health system and how do we allocate resources. So this pathway is really relevant not just for people living what we would say in traditionally resource-limited settings, but this is a global pathway. Develop multidisciplinary and multicultural perspectives towards global health and learning how to collaborate and work together. And this is really a focus of this. And then gaining insight and experience into the way that research can help inform global health issues. And this is a real fundamental part as well. Requirements for the pathway, you saw some of these charts. You'll see another one in a second. They're very similar. So the first 3 things up here, the coursework, the III, or independent investigative inquiry, and the experience in a clinic are things that all of our medical students need to do, but they need to be tailored within the pathway appropriately. So they have some global health coursework, they have a research or other type of project that has some sort of a global health emphasis, but again, it can be done either here, certainly some of the students could be involved, for example in immigrant health issues here in the United States or abroad. And then some experience in a clinic where they can shadow a full-time clinical person and train in a variety of different communities. And then what's really unique to this is this international experience where they have to spend at least 4 weeks consecutively overseas working in an immersion program or a clinical health elective, which I'll talk about in a second. And then finally, as you heard about with all of these programs, the University of Washington really values community service and really makes this an integral part of this, and I think that's reflected in our Peace Corps commitments, which you heard about earlier. So here again is a beautiful chart, just like you've seen before. You can see how this is spread out. Most of you are aware that the general, usual way that medical school works is years 1 and 2 are preclinical years where you're learning a lot of the fundamental basic science, pathophysiology, anatomy, et cetera. And then you move into your 3rd and 4th years where you're doing more clinical work on the wards and you're assuming an increasing amount of responsibility. And so all of these pathways are really laid out over that, as you can see here, where you have the coursework up front for the most part. There's a project that usually occurs between years 1 and 2, and then you have this experience that kind of goes throughout as well as community service. And then usually towards the end of the 3rd year, beginning of the 4th year, or sometime during the 4th year, you have this period of going abroad for people. It's also important to note that the University of Washington has one of the strongest schools of public health in the country and in the world, and some of our students do elect to expand or actually take longer time to complete a master's degree in public health as part of this, and they can overlap some of those requirements with this pathway, and that's quite a popular option as well. So the international experience can be one of 2 things. There's a global health immersion program. I won't read this to you, but the point of this is really that under the direct mentorship of faculty, students are matched to a host community in a developing community, and they spend a dedicated period of time working with the community to identify, examine, and explore solutions to health problems within that community. And they're listening to the community not just for what the problems are, but also to help explore what the solutions are going to be, and really working in partnership, learning how to collaborate with community in that way. The other is the Global Health Clinical Elective, which is really designed for the 4th year medical students after they've had some clinical experience, where they go and spend time in a clinical training opportunity in a developing country setting, and with a specific focus on making sure these are ethically sound and there's good oversight and mentorship during the course of that. And again, in my talk later today, I'm going to speak a little bit to how we actually accomplish training programs in places that are ethically responsible. Here is a wonderful picture of Fan, who's sitting over here to my left, your right, who's going to talk on the panel in a minute, and you'll get to hear about that. But you can see this is a great example of a wonderful student-led project in Uganda that she was able to work on, and she can share more about with you. Here's another student who was able to also work in Uganda, and a little bit about her project, which you can see there as well. She's currently an M.P.H student here, I believe, as well. And another one you can just see here, a student who worked in Lima, Peru, working on a clinical elective and is now in obstetrics and gynecology residency. And these opportunities, in addition to the pathway themselves, there are a variety of other ancillary opportunities, including the concurrent M.P.H in global health, which I just spoke about. There's a journal club which brings together students around articles of relevance to global health to discuss those with faculty and students. They talk about not just what the issues are, but how are they addressed, what are some of the methodologies used to research or assess some of these issues, and to come up with interventions that can have impact. And there's also a global health group, or a medical student interest group around global health, which has been incredibly active and has been able to generate a lot of interest both within the medical school community but also more generally. Here's a picture of Susan Graham, who, as I said, is the faculty director of the pathway, and she's here with one of the wonderful students congratulating him on his M.P.H degree. And here's another student, Thomas Odeni, who's actually from Kenya, who's presenting on a really important study he did, again, using using technology to improve healthcare in Kenya. Really remarkable work that he's done in HIV prevention. And the students, as I said, have been really, really catalytic in bringing people together. Here's an example of a global health panel talking about what career opportunities exist. I think 50 years ago, people weren't clear that there was a career in global health, and now there are many careers in global health. And here's one where the students brought together leading experts from a variety of disciplines to talk about those career opportunities. So some of the unique features, just to reiterate, there's some really wonderful opportunities for international field work. There's research project and service opportunities, and there are over 31 different centers, programs, and initiatives within the Department of Global Health in which students, in all of these, students are able to get engaged. Mentoring, as you heard before, is a key component of all of these pathways, something that we take very seriously, both in terms of career development, but also in terms of providing oversight and guidance. And these are really about interdisciplinary collaboration. So not only are we teaching people about global health, we're teaching people about how to work together towards a common goal, be it globally or locally. This is just to point out that the Department of Global Health has a lot of access for students in terms of different spaces they can access. They have connections all over the world, calendar of lots of speakers almost every day between the Gates Foundation, PATH, Seattle Biomedical, our department. There's just so much going on in our city in global health that we're able to help link students into. And we do have this wonderful resource center, which I pointed out earlier, which helps students access funding, access other opportunities, helps plan the Western Regional International Health Conference, which brings together students from all over the region, and other things, as you see there. Here's a picture from the Western Regional International Health Conference, which really is a remarkable conference, completely student planned and student run. Brings into Seattle some of the, or wherever it's held, last year in Seattle, some of the top experts in field of global health to talk about the issues that the students are interested in. So far, there's been 79 medical students graduated. We have 120 students, I think, currently. Graduates go into a variety of specialties, as you see there, many of which are primary care, and we now have alumni going into fellowships, including my specialty, infectious disease, but other things as well. We have many of them engaged, continue to be engaged with the Global Health Department. So here's our graduation from June of last year. You can see there they are holding their certificates. It's really a really wonderful group of students, and it's a pleasure to work with all of them. And then finally, just to profile one of our alumni who's here in the second row, you can see on her way to Haiti, who had worked through the pathway and is now an infectious disease fellow and had worked in Haiti here on this project, as you see. So with that, I'm going to stop again. I'll be back up after the student panel to talk to you a little bit about how I ended up doing this, and I think it ties in nicely to these pathways. So I look forward to talking to you all then. Thank you.
This is actually the most fun part because you get to hear from the students that are actually participating in the pathway. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves with an initial question, which is, who are you? What year in school are you? What interested you in coming to the University of Washington to begin with? What did you hope for coming to this school? So go ahead, Abby.
Okay. So I'm Abby Gardner. I'm a fourth-year medical student originally from Montana. And we like to call University of Washington Montana's medical school because of the WWAMI program. So naturally that played into my desire to want to come to the University of Washington, and also just a really strong reputation for primary care, which is something that I've always been interested in.
So you did your first year in Montana, in Bozeman, right, at
Correct.
Montana State.
Mm-hmm.
Dan?
Hi, my name is Fan. I'm a second-year medical student. I'm from Olympia, and so this was my medical school when I came here for undergrad as well, and always thought about coming here. I really enjoyed the primary care focus of this university, as well as the really great amount of research that goes along here, and so that's why I came to UW for medical school, and I'm currently doing the global health pathway.
I'm Claudia Diaz. I'm originally from Salem, Oregon, and I came to the University of Washington because of the WWAMI program, because it's the only university in the country where you are going to be sort of thrown into a classroom. Half of you, the Seattle track is where I did my first year. For me, I come from the Northwest, so I have very liberal ideas, and you just sort of think the whole world thinks that way. But when you come together in your second year, you have people from Alaska, Wyoming, Montana, everywhere, and so you get to see the full spectrum of the patients you're going to see when you graduate. So I'm a 4th year. I'm going into OBGYN.
Hi, my name is Kanan Silvis. I'm originally from San Jacinto, California. My family moved to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho when I was in high school, so I'm an Idaho WAMI. I did my first year at the Moscow Pullman site. What interests me in UW was kind of like you over here is the great diversity that this medical school has. When you visit other medical schools across the country, they talk about what hospital you get to go to within the city. In UW, you get to go within all these hospitals within 5 different states, and the opportunity to get outside and explore and travel really brought me here. So.
Great, thank you. Well, now what I'd like you each to address is the pathway you're in, why did you choose it, and really what brought you to the pathway?
Okay. So I'm in the underserved pathway, and what sort of brought me to the pathway is that I'm also a part of another UW acronym called the TRUST program.
Oh, I didn't even introduce that. Go for it.
Which stands for Targeted Rural and Underserved Track. And so I'm from a rural area. I've sort of always had this rural focus, and that's part of what the underserved pathway addresses. So I've been able to spend a lot of time in a rural community in Montana as part of my training, which has fulfilled not only clinical clerkships, but also my I was completed there. I've had a lot of sort of continuity with mentors. It's been a really great way to sort of keep me focused and remind me of why I wanted to be in medical school in the first place. And yeah, has just been sort of a nice way to get plugged into the many community service opportunities that go on at the UW. And then, you know, the other side of the underserved in the urban setting, which is something that was new to me when I came to Seattle from small town Montana. So I think it's really enhanced my education.
Great. So I'm in the global health pathway, and the reason why I've decided to kind of go on that is coming into medical school, I had a lot of personal experiences with my family who immigrated here, and kind of their experiences with the healthcare system. And so saw a lot of challenges that they faced because of cross-cultural barriers. And I just kept thinking, I wish some of these physicians would, you know, maybe have a different perspective or be a little more open-minded when they were dealing with people who may not be exactly from their own community. And so that got me interested in kind of cross-cultural experiences, and that led me to do some traveling, and I decided I really, really enjoyed being able to learn about new people and be able to collaborate with people globally as well. And so when I came into UW Medical School, the global health pathway was very appealing to me in that I felt that it would help me access some of the resources here through the Department of Global Health, as well as in the Seattle area, and help me basically keep my inspiration of why I came into medical school in the first place and direct my path into hopefully a future career that will involve global health.
So I am representing the Hispanic health pathway, and my family is Latina, and I definitely know that in my, when I am a provider, I hope to care for Latino populations. But it was also important for me to get involved with this pathway because it's very diverse, and it allows me to give my perspective on being a Latina whose mom didn't speak English and was able to come through the healthcare system. These classes are phenomenal in that you do get to sort of see both sides of the story. So not everybody in the Hispanic health pathway is Latina, but I am. And I just wanted to add that you don't have to be in one, because I'm also in the underserved and in the global health pathway. It's doable. So I love being involved in many things. There are so many opportunities here. There are people who are not involved in any pathways and are still very well involved, but it's just nice to have a setup.
I'll round it out. I'm in the Indian health pathway, and I guess what got me interested is that I'm from the Saboba Band of Luiseno Indians in San Jacinto, California. I grew up on the reservation. It's where my family's from. And my mom was really involved with not Native health, but She was principal of the high school out on the reservation, and later Sherman Indian High School, which is one of the oldest Native American boarding schools in the country. And I think I went into medical school thinking that native health was the last thing I ever wanted to do. But when I do it, it kind of makes me feel like I'm back at home, and it kind of brings it rises my spirit, and it makes me feel whole again compared with all the classes and things we do. It's a great opportunity. Part of the reason I wanted to come to the University of Washington was, like I said, the 5 different states and such a diverse group of Native American cultures up here, some of the biggest reservations in the country and some of the greatest traditions. And I feel really happy that I get to be a part of that, and next year during my rotations I can explore that a little bit more.
Just to segue onto what Kanan said, something I forgot to tell you earlier is that the university is building a longhouse on Upper Campus. It's called the House of Knowledge, and the community building is funded, and that's where different powwows and other Native gatherings will be able to be held. And if any of you want to be benefactors, we can always use funding to build classrooms and other parts to the Longhouse to enhance the educational opportunities, not just for the medical school, but really for the whole campus, because we need to do a better job attracting more Native students to the University of Washington. So let's see, I think my next question, you all have answered it sort of, and we don't have to go in the same order, but speak a little bit to how the pathway is added value. You all are learning the biomedical sciences, you're learning the art of medicine, you're learning how to work with patients from all over the world. So how does the pathway add value to your coursework in any order?
Yes, I can start. How would I say that it adds values? I'd say that the first thing, if you're ever going to work with Native health, is you have to have a cultural and contextual background of why things are the way they are today and why patients have certain views. And I think that what it adds is it gives you the opportunity to go out there and experience it hands-on. That we talked about the RUOP program earlier in this, and that when I signed up for a RUOP program, they made sure that I was going to reservation and spent firsthand my clinical experience there. And when I fill out clerkships for third year, they'll make sure that I'm going out there. And the other thing that it really does is we also talked about how it introduces you to certain community service aspects that I think otherwise, if I wasn't in the pathways, that I wouldn't recognize was there. I'm also the president of Medicine Wheel, which is the Native American group here on campus. And through them, they helped me set up and apply to be on the second-year curriculum committee to make sure that certain underserved and Native American issues are being incorporated into UW's curriculum. And so I think that it just provides the platform for you to give back and do what you want to do if you're willing to do it.
Thank you.
So when I started medical school, I was terrified of the sciences. It's so easy to get sucked into all the things that you have to learn in just the basic curriculum. But now that I'm a 4th year and I've had my clinical rotations and have actually been on the wards, that stuff that you get in the books is not the hard stuff. Patients that come from very different backgrounds and with different experiences, you need to be able to sort of relate to them, at the very least be willing to work with them. And one of the big things about the UW that I like is that they've always stressed cultural competency. And it was very recently in a rotation where I think it was a Dr. Hayes at Seattle Children's who introduced the term cultural humility to me. And I think that that's something that you only get by being exposed to different cultures, whether that be talking about them in a classroom, going on a global health experience, being in a clinic out in the Yakima Valley. It's only by knowing that there's no way that you can know everything that you actually can get that cultural humility and be able to relate to your patients. And that's ultimately what's going to help you make their lives better. So it's very important. And it's so easy to just get sucked into the books and focus on that.
Yeah, I'd like to echo everything that was just said with the books and with being able to go out into the community. And the pathways really do give a good structure for those opportunities. For example, the Global Health Pathway, I was able to do the GHIP program, the Global Health Immersion program, which is similar to the RUOP, part of the III requirement. But I was able to do that in Uganda this past summer, and the program is 8 weeks long. And I'm not sure I would have been able to find anything similar to that at all in other schools or even here at the UW. The program was made, kind of for the experience of going abroad and that whole experience, not just shadowing a doctor. In fact, that wasn't even really part of it, or it was not research oriented. It was very much about being in the community, doing a community assessment, going the whole 8 weeks and seeing what kind of challenges are really out there if you were to do this work in the future. And I thought that was a really unique program. I was really hesitant about it at first, just because I know research, I know shadowing, but I didn't know what it was like to just kind of be dropped into a community and work my way around. And I have to say that it's been one of the best experiences of my life in medical school. So, and a lot of the pathways really give that structure and those opportunities.
So I was just thinking that this week I'm on a rotation and we just got a new attending. And she was doing introductions, and the way she started the introductions was she asked your name, and then she asked, are you single, are you married? And I said, oh, I'm married, and she said, okay, is your spouse a medicine person, or is he a real person? And I like to think that being in the underserved pathway has helped me maintain being a real person. I think, just like they're saying, a lot of medicine is easy to get caught up in the training, but I think the underserved pathway has really kept me grounded, and, lets you see that serving the underserved can be really fulfilling right now during your training. It's not something that you should just strive for later when you're in practice. It can be something that you're always doing, and I think that that's good for mental health.
Thank you all. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
So another thing I was just thinking about that I really appreciate about these pathways is that you can get together with classmates who have similar interests as you. And it's a 220 class for me this year, and it's a big class. And to be able to kind of find your small groups of students who maybe are passionate about similar things and be able to work on that. For example, through the Global Health Journal Club, which I became affiliated with after joining the pathway, we are able to basically get students of all disciplines, master's programs, graduate programs, residents, anybody who's interested to come, and we just talk about a paper in the field that we find really interesting and we want to talk about. And because UW has such great research and great faculty and great PIs here, we're often able to get people who led these papers, led these research to come with and talk with us one evening for a couple hours. And so those are the times where I can get out of the classroom and get out of the books and really think, oh, now I remember why I was here in the first place. So.
Great. Thank you. So in a minute, I'm going to let you all come up. We have mics halfway up each corridor. So please come to the mics because they tape this. If you have a question, you can be thinking of some questions. I have one last question before I turn it over to you for questions. So a couple of you have alluded to sort of where you're headed or hope to be headed. So maybe speak a little to where you see yourself down the road.
I am hoping to match into a residency for internal medicine, which I'll find out about on March 15th. And I am using internal medicine as a sort of route to do primary care. I'm interested in general medicine, whether that be strictly office-based or if I'm in a small enough community, perhaps being a more traditional internist that can do both inpatient and outpatient practice. Sort of depends on my other half, but that's my ultimate goal, is to pursue primary care.
So I have no idea where I see myself, honestly. I've thought about this question a lot. I get asked this question a lot. I feel like I'm kind of being interviewed right now in a different way. But honestly, I don't know, and this is what's really exciting to me, is that next year I'll go into the clinics, and hopefully there'll be something that really gets me, and then I could have, you know, that kind of lead me along the way to see where it takes me.
So I just came off interview, so I can definitely answer that. I hope to be I hope to match in an OB residency program that has a firm commitment to the underserved, as well as allowing you to explore sort of pathways in an academic setting. After residency, I plan on being a generalist OB with a super passion in family planning. That's me.
I have no idea what I want to do. I think that no one in my family is in healthcare, and so half the classes we take are specialties of things I've never heard of before. And I really enjoy medical school. It's a lot of fun. We get to learn a lot of great things. And I'm really excited for third and fourth year too, to learn what we want to do. I do know that Native health is something that's really important to me, that no matter what I want to do, I want to make sure that I'm involved with it. It wasn't until a very short time ago that Native Americans had a hand in their own health care. And so now that I have that opportunity, and my father and my grandfather laid the foundation for me to be here today, that's something that I want to do to honor them. So that's important to me. So.
And it just reminds you, we have 2 fourth-year students and 2 second-year students, and it's very appropriate for the second-year students to have no idea what at this point. Okay, do we have questions from the audience?
I'm involved with web technologies standards particularly, and I think that's one of the interesting new opportunities of our era, is that the web and the internet and texting, which is slightly different than those, can connect people in new ways. And I just wonder if you guys have anything to say about that, any interesting examples or, I don't know, ways in which these new technologies play into these rural, global, et cetera, paths that you're on.
I'll start. Just immediately what came to mind for me was, especially in rural settings, that's a huge deal, especially when, you know, there aren't really specialists that can be at these communities full-time. For example, I worked with a neurologist in Billings who would just set up blocks of time in his schedule to do basically Skype with a patient, so that they didn't have to drive, you know, 300 miles in the middle of a snowstorm just to make a half-an-hour appointment. And it worked great. And, you know, aside from actually being able to physically touch the patient, you know, you can say, walk around, let me see you, you know, hop on one leg or whatever. And you can see it, you can talk to the patient, and you can say, you know, gosh, I really need to see you in person, or not. Let me save you the trip. And so I think that's one thing that's been big and probably will get bigger.
I did a dermatology rotation at the, through this last year, and they have a sort of telederm program that's set up with Alaska. So they have somebody on staff there, nurse practitioner, PA, who's taking photographs of skin lesions and sending them down to the University of Washington and having sort of consultations that way. So that blew me away. And sort of just to add, I am a huge fan of primary care, but we also need specialists who are committed to serving the underserved, because they will come in handy for us primary care people.
And actually, in the rural part of this region, in addition to needing more primary care physicians, there's a big shortage of general surgeons and psychiatrists and pediatricians. So our workforce needs, we need many different specialties, and that kind of changes over time.
I just had a question as far as in your undergraduate years, what did you guys major in? Because I know you can go in so many tracks to get into medical school.
So I got my bachelor's degree from microbiology.
I did mine here in bioengineering.
I did mine in general science.
I'm a kinesiology major, so it's like health and fitness from Washington State University.
And I was American Studies, so I had to retread to do the science.
But I think you can do anything.
You can do anything.
It's encouraged to do something else. Yeah. You'll get the science.
Yes, I'm interested to know how much you speak some of the languages that of the populations that you will be serving. I assume that if you're of Latina background, you speak Spanish probably pretty well. I don't know if you speak any of the South American languages, Quechua or anything. I'm assuming you speak some, at least one Asian language, but how much language skill do you have going in? How much do you try to acquire as you go along so that you can speak to people in their own languages? And to what extent do you use translators?
I don't speak any Luiseno. Luiseno language is dead. It's been dead for about 100 years due to boarding schools. Every reservation has its own language. It's almost its own community. It's kind of like its own country. One reservation is so different from another. I don't think it's really possible unless you're from that reservation to speak its language. But there are ways that you can go on a reservation and learn certain words, and there's definitely people on reservations that do speak languages and can help you with that. But it is, everyone on reservations pretty much speak English now, so.
So I speak both Spanish and French fluently, but fortunately we have to have medical translators in order to work with our patients as far as legal consent and stuff like that.
I speak Mandarin heritage. I was born in China. I have not really, I work with Asian communities here in Seattle, but I haven't done any overseas work in China. A lot of my interests have been in East Africa, and I don't speak, unfortunately, any of the languages there. English is the official language in a lot of those countries, and then they have their own official language, but then when you get down into the rural villages, it's tribal language. I do hope that eventually, if I do find like a niche in the world, that I would be able to learn more of the language. But again, using translators is definitely an art of its own. And yeah, I've enjoyed that, and it's been a learning experience doing that.
And sadly, despite multiple semesters of college Spanish, as well as Spanish for healthcare professionals, the only language I claim is English.
We do actually have fairly, in the Introduction to Clinical Medicine course and in several of the clinical clerkships, the students get some formalized training in working with interpreters.
I have a question about the curriculum renewal that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
How will that affect the different pathways, especially the trust program that's at the UW?
That is an excellent question. I think that there is a group of, for instance, 15 student groups that came together and formed a culturally competent curriculum committee, and their position and the position of some of the groups working in the curriculum renewal is that some of the experiences that students do in the pathway maybe ought to be required of the entire student body. So I think we all hope that some of the topics that relate to diversity, relate to health disparities, health equity, start appearing in a more robust way throughout the curriculum. I don't think that'll make the trust program go away, because that doesn't necessarily mean that the trust program, for those of you that don't know, is a pipeline program where students have to meet the admission requirements and jump through some extra hoops. They have to be especially committed to working in a rural underserved area. We admit 5 students in Montana, 5 students in Eastern Washington, 5 students in Western Washington, and this coming fall there will be 5 students in Idaho as well. And they participate in the underserved pathway, and they have other curricular additions, and they go back and back to the same community over time. So it's a special program designed to provide some enhanced support for the pipeline for careers with underserved populations in our region in particular. So I don't think that'll go away. And I don't think the pathways will go away. They may change, but who knows? I don't.
All right, now we're running out of a little bit of time here, but you guys have been standing there, so I want you, quick questions, quick answers. 30 seconds, go.
I just had a question about the Global Health Journal Club. about how many students participate in that club?
We usually get, so we try to do this once a month, and we have a student co-facilitator as well as a faculty co-facilitator, and we usually, it's a potluck style, so it's kind of a social event, very informal, very casual. We usually have between 10 to 15, sometimes 20 students. Sometimes they're at faculty's homes and things like that, so.
My question's a bit more of an outlier question directed to the director. When you talk about this pathway gearing the underserved populations, in reference to the shooting that happened at Sandy Hook when apparently the perpetrator was told he was going to be institutionalized by his mother and he reacted out of anger or whatever, do you have any psychiatry pathways to sort of research the global issue of mental health issues, even like the village issues of society and growing doctors that could somehow address and save these issues that result in violence?
We have the 4 pathways that we presented tonight, but a student who would be particularly interested in psychiatric impairment as creating a vulnerable population could create their own little path within the underserved pathway.
I'm a high school student planning to eventually go into medical school, and medical school seems intimidating enough already, and I don't know if I can see myself doing all this extra work, even though the pathways seem like amazing opportunities, but do you think it's worth it in the long run? And how does it?
Yes, the answer is yes.
The least amount of work I can do and still be.
Because how much time does it take up out of your daily schedule?
My advice to you would be, I tell my brothers this all the time, is that when you were in 4th grade, you thought 5th grade was going to be impossible, and you made it through 5th grade. And right now you're in high school, and it seems like a lot of work, but you'll build up over time, and when you get here, you'll be looking, for us, it seems like on this panel that we all look for things that kind of revive us and to bring our fighting spirit back and to kind of ground us in this world and why we're here, because you can get really lost with all the work, so it's definitely worth it.
You should have seen these guys as first-year students, and now they're about to be doctors.
No, it's absolutely worth it because you don't want to just rush through med school if you can enjoy it. If it had just been curriculum, which a lot of med schools in the United States are just curriculum, there's not much opportunity for this. Here at the UW, we have the opportunity to go to Alaska. We're there for 6 weeks and we have the opportunity to explore Alaska, do that. We had the opportunity, I went to Lima, Peru my first year, similar to a program that Fan did, and it was amazing. And those are the things you're going to remember from med school, not cell biology. Yeah, prep cycle. You got to do the fun stuff. Do the fun stuff.
All right, thank you.
You get your best friend out of medical school.
And also, there's a whole new thing that who needs to finish up in 4 years?
Right.
Your parents.
Yeah, I know, your parents are like, are you guys done yet? I know, I said that to my son, he's in his 5th year now. Are you done yet? But really, you can expand the time that you spend in getting this training. And so there's a lot of latitude now to explore and learn, and it's actually very exciting. So these guys, they're representing the best of the best, and you can be part of that process too.
So I'd like to thank our students and thank you for listening. You guys can come out.
Thank you.